Okay, for this question, 22% off. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to find 22% using a calculator. So that's 22 over 100 times by 46, £10.12. Then take it off. What am I going to do? £46, take away the £10.12p gives me £35.88. 1 mark for each. Okay, you could have just found 78% if you wanted, and I'll give you the answer straight away. Next one, 3 out of 8 is what I need to take off this time. So 3 over 8, I'll type that in a calculator, times by £43.60 gives me an answer of £16.35 off. But then again, take it off, £43.60, take away the £16.35, takes me to £27.25p. 1 mark there. And then the last one, before the sale, pair of jeans cost £43. In the sale, they cost £37. So what's the difference between 43 and 37? Well, that's £6. But what are the fractions they've been reduced? Well, £6 out of what they originally cost, which was 43. 1 mark. Okay, for this question, it's easier to just write it as a ratio. So I've written it down as white to red to blue. Then I've written down what you need, which is 210 and 5 millilitres. Then what I do notice is that I have 250 ml of blue already. So what have I times 5 by to get 250? Well, 50. So you get 1 mark for identifying it's 50 times bigger. So then I've multiplied this by 50 and multiplied this by 50. So it's 1 mark for each of them as well. So it's 3 marks there. Then red is 1 tin of 500 ml because we know that up here from the question you can have 500 milliliter tins. So if you only need, that should say 500. If you only need 500, that's 1 tin. But then 10,000 ml, well, that's going to be 10 tins of 1 litre because hopefully you know, I've written up at the top here, 1 litre is the same as 1,000 millilitres. So if your final answer for the extra couple of marks, you're going to have 2 marks here and here for identifying 1 tin and 10 tins, and then filling out this table correctly. All right then, so if the 48's in the middle, that's the same as if I hide that there, all of this would be 55 and 48. And then if I hide that for the covers, it'd be the 48 and the 14 because it's in both. So how much in total was made in the first week? Well, I start by doing the tablet. So I've done 55, add 48, added those two, the circle, 1 mark, and then I've multiplied that by the cost, which gives me this number here, 20,660. So again, I've added for the other side, for the covers, 48 add 14, 62, 62 times 18, 1,116. Okay, so it's 1 mark for each, or if you've attempted to add 48, you get a mark. And then for the third mark is for adding 2 answers together, 23,776. Okay, for this question here, it's in percentages, so add them all up, take away from 100 to find out what percentage is the profit, or 5%. Okay, so you're going to get 1 mark for that. But then it now says how much profit. Well, all of the pie chart in total represents 9,100 or million. Okay, so there would be 6 zeros after here. So I'm going to simply find 5% of that number. Don't forget this is million, but it already tells you in the answer here that you can write it in millions. 5 over 100 times by 9,100 gives me 455 million. So effectively 6 zeros on the end. All right, the next one then, 8.58 million customers. The previous year was this many. So we know we've got to subtract these two. So where did my answer come from? Well, I subtracted them, which is 0.37. So a lot of you have probably put that there. But because it's million, you've got to multiply by a million after, which will give me 370,000. Okay. All right, for this question here, find out what it's gone down first. That's the only way you can start by figuring out the percentage reduction. So I've taken them away, 1 mark for that, 72 down. But now it's finding what 72 is as a percentage of the number it originally was. So if you think of a test, if you had 72 out of what it originally was, which was 900, it's going to be 72 divided by 900 and times your answer by 100 to write as a percentage, and it gives you 8% smack on. So yes, but you've got to prove this is 8%. Okay. All right then. So her total income before tax was $25,000 or pounds or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. Personal allowance means you get 10 grand free. So that's 15 grand here left over. Then everything you earn between 10 and 22. Well, what's the gap between 10 and 22? Well, there's a gap of £12,000 or dollars, because 10 grand you get for free. From 10 up to 22, you pay 20% on. So that's the £12,000, the gap between them two. And then whatever's left, what you earn over, well, they earn 25. So what do they earn over? Well, that's another 3 grand over. So I've split the money up now. 10 grand for free, 12 grand, 20%, 3 grand, 25%, you're going to lose. Add them together, it takes you back to 25. Okay, which is what I've also would have done on the second question. So for this bit, show that Zara should have paid 2,400 at the basic rate. Well, the basic rate is just here. Okay, so that's just the 12 grand. So I've written that there. That's what I've already explained. And I've just found 20%. So 20 over 100 times by the £12,000 is 2,100. You had to show 12,000 for 1 mark and then obviously attempt to find 20% of that number. For the next one, it says total bill last year was 40,000. Sorry, 4,000. That's how much she got taxed. She thinks there's an error. Calculate how much she should have been refunded. So the basic we've already done, 2,400. I've drawn a little picture here on the side to show from 0 up 10k. But it's what I've already explained. Okay. So we already know that. That's 1 mark, 2,400. The next one then is the higher. Well, the difference is 3 grand, which is what I already said. So I now need to find 25% of 3 grand. All right, so 1 mark for showing 3 grand, 1 mark for showing you're finding 25%. 1, 2, 3. Obviously, your 4th mark then for the 750. And then where's your rest of your marks going to come from? Well, adding the two together is £3,150, but then showing the refund should be £850 because she actually got charged £4,000 in total. Okay. For this question, you could use speed, distance, time, but I've just tried to write it out in 2,000 meters. It would take 1 hour, and I've just tried to get it down to 300 meters. So I've written 200 meters is equal to 60 minutes because I asked you for your answer in minutes. I then just decided to find out how far you go in half an hour, which is half of the distance, so 1,000 meters. And all I'm trying to do is get down to 300 or up to 300 eventually. So I then divided by 10 here, which means in 3 minutes, I'd go 100 meters. So for 300 meters, it would have to take you 9 minutes. Whichever way you've done it, you're going to have 1 mark for your workings, 1 mark for the 9 minutes. Okay. The next one says, what assumption have you made? Well, I've just made the assumption he's walking in a straight line. Okay, could have written some other things, but that's the obvious one. You're just assuming he's walking in a straight line, not turning or stopping. Next one, what impact would this have on the time you've calculated in A part 1? So that's this one here. Well, I've written here, what impact could it have on the time? Well, it could take a little bit longer, or this answer here could be a little bit too small. All right, bit of a strange question for 1 mark, I know. If you're ever struggling, just try to think more real life. The last question, Amir cuts his lawn 25 times a year. He uses 4.5 litres of petrol. How much petrol does the lawnmower use for every 100 metres? So what have I started to do? Well, 25 times a year. So all I've done first is, if I know 25 times would use 4.5 litres, I've divided by 25 to find out how much you need one time, which is 0.18 litres. So that's every time you use it, not much. Then I know that, well, why have I divided by 3? Because I already know that it's 300 metres for one time, because it told you right at the beginning here, all the way at the top, 300 metres. So I've simply divided this by 3 to find out how far you would go in 100 metres, which is 0.06. So you have 1 mark if you've got 0.18, 1 mark for noticing you had to divide by 3, and then obviously your final mark for 0.06. Okay, for this one here, you need to remember or learn the conversion of 1 litre is exactly the same as 1.75 pints. So 60p per pint. Let's have a look. How do I find out the cost if this is £1.30 per litre? Well, I've got to divide by the conversion. So I've done £1.30 divided by 1.75. You get 1 mark just for noticing the conversion, 1 mark for trying to divide, and then your final mark for writing it to 2dp, 74 pence. Okay, so obviously then tick in no. The last question, Amia's friend claims that she walks 1 7/8, so almost 2 miles, not quite, when she cuts the lawn. Approximately how far is this in meters? So you need to know the conversion of, if you wanted 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers, all right? So I've done a bit of workings here, but for 1 mark, what you could do is, if you remember 1 mile is the same as 1.6 kilometers or 1,600 meters, it quite clearly, which ones can you remove? If we just focus on meters, 1 mile is 1,600, so it's got to be close to 3,000, because if you double that, so a bit of logic, so you'd have to get rid of that, you'd have to get rid of that, and it would be between these three anyway, okay? But double 1,300 would be 1,000, sorry, it'd be 3,000. Double 1,600 would be 3,200, and that'd be 2 miles. This is just less, so hence why we've gone for 3,000. Nice easy question to start. 1st of July 2014, how many were sold? So here it is. 2014 up and across, so make sure you choose the correct scale. All right, each square's worth, tiny square's worth 100, so 1,100, 1 mark. Next one, from the graph, it is possible to see how many bikes were made on the 1st of December, or is it, sorry. So you must give a reason. Well, December is a completely different time of year to July. So no, only shows July. Okay, next one, complete the statement below. Right, why have I gone with 7? Let's have a look. On the 1st of July 2017, there were 7 times as many. So, bikes on the 1st of July 2012. So I had a look what was 2017, which is 3,500 up and across. Same for 2012, up and across. Written them down like so. And then, what have I times 500 by to get there? Okay. Sorry, that should say divide, or the arrow should go the other way, so 7 times. Okay. Okay, 1st of December, 4,000 bikes. Two factories working 80% of its capacity. This means that only 8% of the maximum were. So if 4,000 were made, that's 80%. So let's have a look what I've done. What I've just started by just using a bit of ratio, really. 80% of the bikes is 4,000, so I know 40% is 2,000, so I know 20% is 1,000. I've just halved, kept halving, and I found all these different percentages by halving in terms of bikes. 5% would be equal to 250. But the question said, when the factory works at 95%, so how would I make 95% now? Well, 80%, 10%, 5%, add those three together, which means I add 4,500 and 250. Then here, gives me the answer of 4,750, okay? So 1 mark for showing that that's equal to 80%. 1 mark if you can find then some of the percentage, but obviously the full marks would be for noticing the final answer of 4,750. Okay. Right, then let's have a look at this. Estimating the mean always comes up, guys. Hopefully we'll, again, on the next exam. How do you find the estimating the mean? You always find the midpoints, okay? How do you find the midpoints? Quickest way on a calculator is add these together and halve them. 1,000 add 2,000 halved gives you that. You then always multiply the frequency by the midpoints, gives you all of these answers. You add these answers up, you add the frequency column up, and then that is what you divide for your mean. So check all of these numbers are correct, but they should add up to a total of 97,500, and then I can divide that by 31, because there is 31 in total here. So roughly 3,145 bikes to the nearest bike. Okay, 1 mark for all the midpoints, 1 mark here, 1 mark for dividing by 31, 1 mark for your final answer. You could have left that as a decimal, that would have been fine. Last one, which group contains the median number of bikes made per day? Circle your correct answer. Why have I gone with this one? Well, if there are 15/16 bikes as the median, because there were 31 in total, half of 31 would be the median, which is 15/16, 15.5. Well, 15.5 would round up to 16 bikes. So here's the first 3 bikes. So it can't be that. Then the next 12 bikes, so that's 3, add the 12 is 15. So 15 bikes have been made here, but we said it was 15.5 or 16. So the 15.5th or 16th bike was made here, which is 3,000 and 4,000. Hence why I've gone with that. Okay then, so nice exchange rate question. £480, so 480 quid. I've started by times in it. You get 1 mark for times in by the exchange rate. Then though, we got to notice that you can only have 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 1,000. So they can't give you any So that's it. They can't give you any of the coins or pennies. So I've got to round this down now because you can't overcharge them more than 480. So I've simply taken off 5.2. I've rounded it down to 590 because in terms of notes, 10 notes, 20 note, 50 note, etc., 590 is as close as you could get. So now I've got to use the same exchange rate because you haven't brought it yet. Normally people would think to use the other 1.28, but that's incorrect. So I'm going to do 590 now divided by 1.24, which is £475.81. So 1 mark for noticing 590 and third mark for trying to divide it. A mark there for obviously changing it back and rounding it to £475.81. And a mark at the beginning for timesing by the exchange rate. Okay. Now, the next question, we will need to use this information. So let's have a look. Gareth paid £250 to buy 310, but because he's already bought it now, you would actually use this exchange rate, okay, which is 1.28. So I'm going to divide 310 by 1.28, which gives me this number here. I haven't rounded it yet, £242. I'm then going to take that away from 250, because obviously it's less, and then that will show me what I've lost, okay? So it's 1 mark for dividing by 1.28, 1 mark for the answer 242, and trying to take it away. But obviously your final mark is for £7.81, or you could have left the decimal in there as it was. Tricky question. You want to find the volume. If you want to find the volume of this is a prism. So you've got to find the area of the cross section, which is a triangle at the front, then multiply how far it goes back. Well, you can't find the area of this triangle unless you know the height. So this is the giveaway there, that this is a right angle triangle. You don't know the height because they only give you the diagonal and the base. So this is Pythag. Okay, I've written that there, Pythag. So this is the first part, is you had to do this. So square, square, square root. So 1.8 take away 0.7. So if I just draw a right angle triangle here, there is the 0.7. There is the 1.8. Always write the biggest number first. 1.8, 0.7. Square, square, square root. And then decide whether you subtract or add. Or to find this one, you'd subtract because it's a smaller length. 1.658 meters rounded to 3dp. So if you've noticed this Pythag, you've obviously got a mark there. 1.658, you've got a mark there. Okay, now I want to find the volume. So I can use my answer to find the area. So what is the cross section? Well, it's a triangle. How do you find the area of a triangle? Base times height and halve it. So 1.4. Why have I gone with 1.4? Well, careful. If this is 0.7, all of the triangle is two 0.7s, which is 1.4. Add them together. So I've done 1.4 times the height, because I now know the height here, which I found using Pythag. 1.4 times 1.658, then halved it, has given me 1.160. So if you try to find there, so if you've noticed that's how you find the area of a triangle, you've got 1 mark, another mark there for finding the area of the triangle, and your final mark is for multiplying by the length, because for volume it's 3D, you've stretched the triangle back 2.5. So your final answer of 2.9 meters. But you are allowed anything in the region of 2.9 up to 3. So if you had 2.9 something, you would still get it right, okay? All right, next one. Which of the following is equal to 0.2 meters cubed? Okay, well, meters to centimeters, you would divide by 100, but you got to divide by 100 cubed, okay? So hence why, multiply by 100 cubed, hence why the answer would not be 20, and it's 200,000. Okay, for this question here, I need to know the density and the mass and the volume. So to do that, I've written both by here and here. You can see the triangles. Mass always goes on top, so density, mass, volume. Okay, what am I trying to find? Well, I'm trying to find the volume of aluminium. So if I cross out, volume, I'm left with mass over density. Mass divided by density, which the mass was 9,450. Density was 2.7, careful, I said aluminium, so make sure you take it from the right one up there. So my answer was 3,500. So 1 mark for your answer, 1 mark for trying to divide, and 1 mark if you've noticed that mass divided by density. If you multiplied, you get a mark, okay, because you made an error, but you'd still get a mark for attempting it. Next question, same thing. But, so here's my triangle, but this time it's slightly different. We're trying to find the mass, so cross out mass, they're next to each other, and we know we've got to multiply. 1.6 times 3,500, 1.6 times 3,500, the volume would give me my answer of 5,600. Now, my 3,500 came from here, so if you used your answer here, but it was wrong. But your workings are correct. So if you had a different answer here, but you still multiply by 1.6, you get the full 3 marks. Okay, but it's 1 mark for noticing you multiply, 1 mark for using your previous answer, and 1 mark for 5,600. Okay, only 1 mark available here, but I've gone for 650. Why? Well, if it's 324 meters tall, you know that steps are not going to be a meter tall. They're going to be slightly smaller, probably half the size, hence why all I've done is double 324, which will get me to roughly 650. So that just seemed like a reasonable estimate for me. Okay, how do I know this is going to be trig? Well, you can see that's the giveaway, that this here is a right angle triangle. Let's colour it in. I'm going to label it, so opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, okay, and off I go with using trig. So SOHCAHTOA, I've crossed out the ones with H in, because we're not going to use H, so OTA, O's at the top. Now, if you scribble out T, because you're trying to find the angle, but remember, you can't completely ignore it, so we've got to use the inverse, which is to the -1. So it's opposite divided by the adjacent, tan to the -1. Before it. Opposite was 324, 800. Okay, so you got 1 mark if you've noticed that you need to use tan, 1 mark for substituting in, and 1 mark for the answer of 22 degrees. Okay, to 1 dp because it was 0.0. Okay, and that is the paper complete.